Hello, this is how to install Windows 98 2nd edition. We're going to use VirtualBox because as a virtualization software, it still supports PS2 mouse. Machine, new, Windows 98. It selects the correct operating system and version. We will need an ISO file. Okay. OS cannot be determined from the selected ISO. Guest OS will need to be installed manually. So this probably means that there is no support for unattended install, which VirtualBox probably supports for some operating systems, but not a problem. We're going to step through all of the steps of the Windows 98 2nd edition ISO installation wizard. This operating system is from 1999, June. Does not support SMP, so just one CPU thread. The amount of random access memory, I don't ever remember to have had a Windows 98 machine with more than 128 megabytes of random access memory. I see 64 allocated in here. Let's go with 128. How do we do that? Certainly did not support EFI. Create a virtual hard disk, 2 gigabytes sounds about okay. Let's see if it supports more. 16. Let's see the settings for this virtual machine. System PIIX3 as the motherboard, PS2 mouse, very important because this operating system does not support USB tablet. Okay, the rest of the settings seem okay. Storage, so should be IDE, which is PATA, not SATA. In here, there should be both the virtual hard disk, which is the VDI file, and the ISO DVD unit. Seems okay. Sound Blaster 16, wow. Network address translation, so this should provide the virtual machine should be able to connect to the internet. Let's see if we can install the operating system correctly. Boot from CD-ROM. Start Windows 98 setup from CD-ROM. Welcome to setup. So parts of the setup are probably MS-DOS based 16-bit. Part of the installer and the final operating system will be 32-bit. You can boot from a MS-DOS boot floppy disk and start installation from there. You can copy the contents of the ISO CD-ROM and on the hard disk, boot from the floppy disk, and then start the setup.exe installer from the hard disk. Don't forget to enable HiMem. So it asks if I want to continue, enter. Configure unallocated disk space, enter. You have a drive over 512 megabyte in size. I don't remember what this thing was, which means back in the day before 2004, I have never had a ID hard disk larger than 512 megabyte for Windows 98 second edition. Large disk support. Let's keep the default, which is no, which means that we will only use 512 megabyte. It rebooted instantly, and now I'm not sure what we should select in here. I don't remember it formatting the disk or copying the files over, so who knows? So I have booted twice from the DVD drive from the ISO. Routine check, enter. That was fast. Continue. So this is the Windows 3.11, Windows 3 based part of the installer. The installer is a series of wizards. Some are MS-DOS based, some are Windows 3 based, some are Windows 95 based. C:\Windows. I remember I have never used typical. I always went custom. Change keyboard sound, display, mouse behavior. Accessories. I have never used the briefcase, the desktop wallpaper. Of course, you enable games. Why would you install Windows 98 second edition without Minesweeper and Solitaire? Mouse pointers, quick paint. Okay. Address book, what is this thing? So this was part of a personal information suite, management suite. I have never used Outlook Express. Connect to other computers and online services. Let's see what this thing is. Dial-up networking. I have never used this thing. Net meeting was a predecessor of the instant messengers. Draw in a shared whiteboard. Share applications. Wow. I have never used this thing. Phone dialer I have never used. Internet tools. I have never used these. Internet tools. Connection sharing, this was if your computer had internet, other computers could connect to your computer, for instance, via, I know, a twisted pair, Ethernet cable if you had two network interface cards or something. And then you could share your internet connection with the other computers. So this enabled a network address translation server on your computer. Personal web server, a small HTTP server. Probably a predecessor of IIS. I have never used any of these. This I have used once. multimedia, CD player, Macromedia, Shockwave and Flash, sound schemes, video compressor, volume control, online services, AOL, AT&T, CompuServe, Prodigy, Internet. I'm not sure if any of these still work, or even I'm not even sure if these still exist. System tools. Group policies. Wow. Support for anti-Active Directory style services servers. I'm not sure what these things are. I have never used any of these except the character map. Web TV for Windows. Wavetop. Oh. Next. Windows 98 workgroup. English US. United States. So this says that it copies file to the directory that I have selected, which is on the virtual hard disk, the first partition, :/Windows. While the installer progresses, there's a slideshow with the features of the operating system. I have never seen the progression of the slideshow pages this fast before. Okay, as in a very old operating system, Windows 98 second edition, what you want to do is to install the operating system on the best hardware possible. Again, it only supports one CPU, this one CPU thread. Current CPUs are extremely fast, so that would be better hardware. Doesn't support newer hard disk technologies than PATA IDE, so use that. You should probably allocate more than 512 megabytes for the hard disk. Type a name to set up user. I accept the agreement. And now we need the license key. I have provided the Windows license key. Now I was saying how to make the best possible virtual machine with Windows 98 second edition. Again, give it the best hardware possible that the operating system supports, and then install the latest and greatest software that still did support Windows 98 second edition. So that was, if I remember correctly, Internet Explorer 6 SP1. There was, you can look up the newest version of Mozilla Firefox that still supports Windows 98 second edition. What else? The MDAC, which is the Windows Data API support subsystems. The Unicause, the Win32 Unicode API functions. So the functions that end with W. there's if your virtual machine supports hardware somehow, GPU, hardware GPU, then you might be able to install DirectX. There were .NET versions that still supported Windows 98 second edition. And then that's about it. These are basic APIs or minimal libraries that you did install in Windows 98 second edition, and then on top of that you install the actual applications. I know, maybe some games, Delphi 7, integrated development environment, Visual Basic, the latest version that's not .NET. What else was there? Visual C++ 6, etc. So let's continue installing. Finish. It detects hardware. So as far as I know, until now, it didn't use the networking at all. The Windows 98 second edition license key validation does not connect to the network. Installing and detecting hardware drivers also doesn't use the internet. If your virtual machine has some hardware that's not supported by Windows 98 by default, you might need to install it after the installer finishes. Windows 98 drivers are probably also SIS files, maybe a setup.exe file that you need to download from the manufacturer's website of the hardware. Restart now. The CD-ROM is still inside so the ISO is still inside the CD-ROM drive, and I'm not sure it's needed starting from this point. After the step where it says copying Windows 98 files to your computer. But fortunately, the ISO CD-ROM drive is the first drive in the boot order, so that will boot first. But that expects that the user selects if the user wants to boot from the CD-ROM, otherwise it will boot from the hard disk, from the virtual hard disk. This is because many support issues were with people that try to install Windows operating systems that just kept the installer CD-ROM inside the CD-ROM drive for, I don't know, months. Not just for the period of the installation. Yes. Installing Windows 98 second edition is an adventure. Sometimes it might work, the next time will not. Hopefully this is just this thing, a glitch. If you press the close button, nothing important will be misconfigured or not installed. Or if it forces you to just reinstall from scratch the operating system, maybe the second time that you install, the installation will be successful. Shell W API. So this is shell 32 and this is shell Windows API DLL. No export T file attributes A. There's no such thing. It's probably, I don't know, set file attributes A. No Windows API function starts with lowercase t. Yeah, the installer, if it shows errors, most of the time it was something about Windows DLL timestamps. So the timestamp of files was not in a correct order. You could not actually install Windows 98 on a computer and just copy the files or the entire partition to another computer and have the computer just work. I needed to install over and over Windows 98 second edition on a fleet of computers which are completely identical. And now the installer seems to have hanged. I have restarted the computer and I'm not sure why I'm greeted with this dialog where it asks a user and a password. The same error. This installation is probably not going to work okay, so we probably need, I know, another ISO or just to reinstall from scratch using this same ISO file. I have deleted the virtual machine, reinstalled from scratch, got to the exact same error. I have used a different Windows 98 second edition ISO, installed everything from scratch, and I got to the same error. And people suggest that you search on Google for shell WAPI DLL Windows 98. There's many links to the exact same issue, which is the patcher 90x, which contains a possible fix, jhrobotics on github.com. The issue is something about TLB invalidation bug and about Windows 98 second edition, and because of the CPU that I have, which is too new for Windows 98 second edition, even if this is a virtual machine. And the solution that's suggested here is so they have two bug fixes, one for Windows 98 second edition, this one, TLB invalidation bug with T set, this thing, T file attributes A. And then for Windows 98, not second edition, Windows 98 first edition, there's a CPU speed limit issue. So this, we don't need this fix. We need just this fix. And they suggest that where is it? In order to install, I should find in the releases in this GitHub repository a floppy disk image. I should boot my virtual machine from this boot image. In a column backslash, I should run patch 9x. So let's see if this thing actually works. So where are the releases, this thing? Patcher 90x 0850 boot IMA. And let's see if it boots, the boot order puts the floppy first. Yes, it does. So it did boot from the floppy disk. I didn't get to see what it said. Let's actually restart. Pre-DOS EMS XMS. So this is an operating system that's probably available from this boot floppy. At install, is it? This thing, so patch 9x without any parameters. This will make the patcher run in interactive mode. So this thing, watch for starting the patching. Interactive mode, patch 9x. Patch 9x, go. Path to Windows system. Patch files. The default strategy patch files VMM32VXD will be patched directly, which is default, which is 2. Let's see if I press enter, what happens. Apply patches, yes. Patch applied successfully, so it changed to VXD files. And now I should shut down probably the machine. And then remove the floppy image. How do I do that? Okay, so let's look again. No floppy disk, boot order floppy optical hard disk. I still have the CD-ROM image, so it will boot from that. Start. If I don't select nothing, there's a 10 seconds timeout, and then it will boot from the hard disk, which is what we want. The installer for Windows 98 Second Edition failed because of this error. So I needed to shut down the machine. That's why the file system check has run. Okay, so I didn't make it this far before. Let's see. Eastern. January 25, 12. What is that? The year. This is the year 25. Wow. The Wikipedia page for Windows 98 for Windows 98 contains also the Wikipedia page for Windows 98 Second Edition. And in here, there's a chapter on the software that can be upgraded. So if you install the latest version of Windows 98 Second Edition, you still can improve the installation by installing all of these. So this is Internet Explorer 6 SP1. I don't use Outlook Express. There's this latest version of DirectX 9.0.c from October 2007. There's .NET Framework 2.0, Visual C++ Runtime 2005, Windows install, so MSI 2.0, RDP Client 5.2, MDOC 2.8.1, Office XP SP3, Unicause, this thing, MSLU, Microsoft Layer 4 Unicode, the WMI, MSXML3, and I'm not sure what was it with MSXML6. WMI 1.5, Windows scripting host. There's people that have actually downloaded all of these and created an integration, a batch file that installs all of these one by one, including the latest version of Mozilla Firefox ESR version that still supports Windows 98 Second Edition. Let's see where we have got with the installer. Yay, we're at the desktop. Show this screen each time Windows 98 starts. Let's see if we can change the resolution. Right-click on the desktop and Properties. Appearance, where is it? Settings. No, we can't improve the screen resolution. Some of the online tutorials that talk about how to install Windows 98 Second Edition with the most possible software upgrades and hardware features inside, for instance, in a VirtualBox virtual machine, is this one, forums.virtualbox.org, topic 28, Windows 98 Second Edition step by step. And this is a very, very complicated procedure. So you start from a very patched Windows 98 updates CD. In addition to the software mentioned here, this procedure also has a newer MSXML, so version 4 instead of version 3, .NET 1.1 in addition to .NET 2, 7-zip, the version of Mozilla Firefox is Firefox Portable 38.1 ESR. There's a Java Runtime Environment 6 U22, OpenOffice, PDF Reader Sumatra, a version of Firefox for a version of Flash Player for Firefox. Here, Fun Viewer, the Mega Codec Pack from Klite, FileZilla for FTP client, .NET Framework 2 with hotfixes, and for the monitor and GPU, there's this thing, Soft GPU. There's the auto patcher, probably something similar to this thing. The virtual machine in VirtualBox needs to be set up in a certain way. You need to not select Windows 98 as OS type, but Windows 7 32-bit. Then you should select as display as VGA. Base memory seems that it can do 512 megabytes. This thing I did not have enabled. This thing I did not have enabled. It increases the video memory, uses VBox as VGA, enables some 3D acceleration for games, and it uses 3 storage devices. There's a virtual hard disk, should be at least 8 gigabytes. Then the regular Windows 98 install CD on the // drive, and then this ISO from this thread, the Windows 98 update CD. This thing should be the secondary slave ID optical drive. Or audio device, Sound Blaster 16, which is the default, is okay, or ICH AC97. And then it runs some interesting VBox manage command lines. CPU profile AMD Athlon 64X2 dual core. Wow. I'm not sure if this thing has been tested recently, this procedure. For Windows 98 components, it says that all of the components should be enabled, with the except of the second accessibility. No multi-language support, and web TV should be disabled as it is by default. The hang at the end of the installation. Then you can improve the virtual hard disk speed by enabling DMA. Soft GPU and OpenGL. Compatibility for XP programs. I'm not sure what that thing can mean. In order to run XP programs, it says that you should increase the allocated random access memory to 1 gigabyte. And towards the end, there's on the second ISO, on the second CD-ROM drive, there's this apps.bat file, which you run it, and then it will do a ton of things, install all of these software, including tidying the Windows Start menu. File associations. Wow, that's a ton of research. Not sure. Seems like this person actually did create this virtual machine multiple times. maybe for day job related purposes. And this is the best alternative that the person found. So I don't really need to play games or have GPU hardware acceleration or GPU pass-through or something. But I totally do need a better resolution than this one. Let's see if something can be done, but the previous tutorial that I saw seemed to suggest that I need to select a better setting for the display hardware in Oracle VM VirtualBox in the virtual machine settings. Generic television, wow. I have searched for VirtualBox Windows 98 second edition monitor resolution. This is the first result, Windows 98 display stuck at 16 colors 640 by 480, which then sends you to a second tutorial. This one is for Windows 98 and 95 guest OSs for VirtualBox. So there's fixes for sound and fixes for driver for the display and monitor. So 16 colors 640 by 480. We should not use such a thing in VirtualBox because it is slow. Maybe this thing was true. The first option we should not use. Bare Windows driver is buggy, and then the second option is SiteTech Display Doctor. There's an ISO file for it. So this is what I'm trying to install right now, SiteTech Display Doctor. So I'm trying this ISO, SiteTech Display Driver 7 ISO. The virtual machine looks like this. This is the primary 0. This is the secondary 0, so the slave. And whatever, this is the device 1 and secondary, so this is the second slave or something. So first master, first slave, second slave. From my computer, e:, an installer, next, next. Next. Wow, a ton of files for just a display driver. Great, blue screen of death. After the program launches, you have to find a little round radio button link to click the Enable the new driver. Replaces outdated driver technology. Okay, so some fiddling will be required. Hopefully it works in the end.